Dr. Kethora pressed her six-fingered hands against the cold metal surface of the observation window. The stars looked peaceful tonight, but she knew better. Her blue skin had grown pale over the past few days as the terrible news spread through their research station. The Krextai were coming. Everyone on Station Omega-7 had heard the stories. The Krextai Dominion was known across the galaxy for one thing. They destroyed planets. Not just conquered them or enslaved the people living there. They actually broke planets apart and used the pieces to build more warships. Kethara was a scientist who studied old things. For the past 20 years, she had been looking at ruins and artifacts from dead civilizations. Her favorite mystery was the humans of Sol System. The Galactic Council had put a big invisible fence around their star system 200 years ago. No one was allowed to go in. No one was allowed to come out. The official reason was simple. Humans were too dangerous. But Kethara had found old human things on dead worlds. Strange metal pieces with symbols on them. Ancient data cores with partial files. Most interesting of all were the old stories that other species told about humans. They said humans fought wars in ways that made no sense. They said humans never gave up, even when giving up was the smart thing to do. The door to her lab opened with a soft hiss. Her research partner, Dr. Velen, walked in. His green scales were darker than usual, which meant he was scared. "Kethara, you need to see this," he said. His voice shook a little. The long-range sensors just picked up the Krextai fleet. She followed him to the main control room. The big screen showed a map of their part of space. Red dots were moving toward their homeworld of Zealand Prime. There were so many red dots that they looked like a swarm of angry insects. "How many ships?" she asked. 3,000, answered Commander Zexai, the station leader, including 12 planet killers. The room fell silent. Everyone knew what planet killers could do. They were huge ships with weapons that could crack a world's core and make it explode from the inside. "How long do we have?" Kethara asked. 72 hours until they reach Zealand Prime, Commander Zexai said. Maybe less. Kethara felt her hearts beating fast. Her species had 2 hearts, and right now both of them were racing. 3 billion Zelani lived on their homeworld. The Krextai would kill every single one. "What about the Galactic Defense Force?" asked Dr. Valen. Commander Zexai made a bitter sound. "The Defense Force has maybe 200 ships in this sector. The Krextai have 3,000. It would be like trying to stop a flood with a paper towel." Kethara looked at the red dots moving across the screen. Her people were going to die, and there was nothing anyone could do about it. The Galactic Council would send their thoughts and prayers after everyone was dead. That was how it always worked, but wait, maybe there was something. "I need to get to my lab," she said suddenly. "Kethara, this is not the time for research," Commander Zexai said. "Trust me," she replied, already running toward the door. Back in her lab, Kethara pulled out a special storage box. Inside was the most interesting thing she had ever found. A piece of metal from an old human ship. It was just a small fragment, but it had symbols carved into it. She had spent years figuring out what the symbols meant. The symbols were coordinates. Not just any coordinates, but the location of a place called Earth in the Sol system. More important than the coordinates was something else carved into the metal. 3 simple letters. SOS. Kethara had learned that SOS was an old human distress signal. It meant save our souls or save our ship. When humans sent this signal, it meant they needed help right away. She had found other human artifacts with the same signal pattern. It seemed like any human ship or station could send out this SOS call, and other humans would come to help. Even if it was dangerous, even if it meant fighting a war. The Galactic Council had made it illegal to contact the Sol system. Anyone who tried would be arrested and put in prison for the rest of their life. But Kethara looked at the screen showing the Krextai fleet, and she made her choice. She was going to break the law. Working quickly, Kethara set up the station's most powerful communication array. She pointed it directly at the Sol system and began preparing the message. The old human artifacts had taught her how their distress signals worked. They were simple but effective. First, she sent the SOS pattern. 3 short beeps, 3 long beeps, 3 short beeps. Then she added everything she knew about their situation. The location of Zealand Prime, the number of Krextai ships, how long they had left. Her hands were shaking as she typed in the final part of the message. 3 billion innocent people will die in 72 hours. Please help us. This is Dr. Kethara of the Zelani Republic, calling any human ship that can hear this message. She pressed the send button. The message shot out into space at faster than light speed. It would reach the edge of the Sol system in just a few minutes. If there were any humans still alive in there, if they still cared about helping other species, they would get the message. What have you done? Dr. Valen had come back to her lab and was staring at her communications setup. I sent a distress call to the humans, she said. Dr. Valen's scales turned almost white. Cathara, that's illegal. If the council finds out, they'll execute you. If I don't try, the Krextai will execute all of us anyway, she replied. Along with everyone on our homeworld. She kept sending the message over and over. Every few minutes, the same SOS pattern went out into space. The same plea for help. The same desperate hope that someone was listening. Hours passed. Dr. Valen had gone to pack his things and prepare for evacuation. Commander Zexai had ordered everyone to abandon the station. But Cathara stayed at her post, sending the message again and again. Maybe the humans were all dead. Maybe they had killed each other in some terrible war. Maybe the Sol system was empty now, and her message was flying through space toward nothing but cold planets and broken ships. Or maybe the stories were true. Maybe humans really were as dangerous as everyone said. Maybe they were so dangerous that they could fight the Krextai and win. She looked at the countdown timer on her screen. 68 hours until the Krextai reached Zalen Prime. 68 hours until 3 billion people died. Her finger pressed the send button one more time. The SOS signal shot out into the darkness, carrying with it the last hope of her entire species. Somewhere in the black of space, her message was traveling toward a star system that had been quiet for 200 years, toward a species that the galaxy feared so much they had locked them away behind an invisible wall. Cathara closed her eyes and whispered a prayer to the old gods. She prayed that her message would find someone who could help, someone who remembered what it meant to fight for people they had never met. She prayed that the humans were still human. Admiral Sarah Chen was having the worst day of her career, and that was saying something. She had been in the Terran Defense Force for 30 years and had seen plenty of bad days. Today was supposed to be simple. She was at Shipyard Delta 9, watching workers take apart the last of humanity's most dangerous warships. These ships had been built during the Unification Wars, back when humans were still fighting each other instead of hiding from the galaxy. The ship in front of her was called the Ghostmaker. It was painted black and covered in weapons that most species thought were myths. The workers were being very careful as they removed each weapon system. One mistake could turn the entire moon into dust. "Admiral, we have a problem," said Captain Martinez, her aide. He was running toward her with a data pad in his hand. "What kind of problem?" Sarah asked. She was tired of problems. All she wanted to do was finish destroying these ships and retire to a quiet farm on Mars. The outer monitoring stations picked up something. "An alien distress signal," Sarah frowned. "That's impossible. No alien signal has reached our system in 200 years. The barrier makes sure of that." The barrier was humanity's greatest achievement and greatest shame. It was an invisible wall of twisted space-time that surrounded the entire Sol system. Nothing could get in. Nothing could get out. It had kept humanity safe from the galaxy, and the galaxy safe from humanity. Captain Martinez handed her the datapad. "The signal is using old Earth military codes, Admiral. Someone out there knows our emergency frequencies." Sarah looked at the data. Her blood went cold. The message was simple but clear. An alien species called the Zilani was about to be destroyed by something called the Krextai Dominion. 3 billion people were going to die in less than 70 hours, but that wasn't what made her hands shake. What made her hands shake was the signature at the end of the message. It was a perfect SOS pattern, sent on the old military emergency frequency that hadn't been used in centuries. "Run a full analysis on this signal," she ordered. "I want to know everything. Where it came from, how old it is, if it's real." "Already done, Admiral," Captain Martinez said. "The signal is real. It's coming from a research station about 40 light years from here. The sender claims to be a xenoarchaeologist named Dr. Cathara." Sarah closed her eyes. 40 light years? That was well outside the barrier, in the part of space that humanity had agreed never to enter again. The part of space where other species lived and died without any help from the monsters of Sol system. "Admiral," Captain Martinez said quietly, "there's more. Our computers have been analyzing galactic communications for the past few hours. The Krextai Dominion is real. They're a species that destroys planets for resources. According to our data, They've killed over 50 billion people in the past century. 50 billion people. Sarah had seen war, but nothing like that. Even during humanity's darkest days, they had never killed on such a scale. "What does Earth Central Command want us to do?" she asked. Captain Martinez looked uncomfortable. "They want us to ignore the message. They say it's not our problem. They're worried that if we respond, the galaxy will know we're still here." Sarah nodded. That was the safe choice. The smart choice. Humanity had been hiding behind their barrier for 2 centuries, and it had worked. No wars, no invasions, no reason for other species to remember that humans existed, but 50 billion people were dead, and 3 billion more were about to join them. Sarah looked at the Ghostmaker again. The workers had removed most of its weapon systems, but the ship's core was still intact. Its engines could still push it faster than anything else in the galaxy. Its shields could still stop weapons that could crack moons. "Captain, I want you to send a message to every decommissioned ship captain in the system. Tell them to report to their ships immediately." Captain Martinez stared at her. "Admiral, you can't be serious. Those ships were retired for a reason. They're too dangerous for peacetime operations." "This isn't peacetime," Sarah said. "Send the message." "But Admiral, Earth Central Command specifically ordered us to ignore the alien signal." Sarah turned to face him. Her gray eyes were hard as steel. "Captain, I've been following orders my whole life. But some things are more important than orders. Send the message." Captain Martinez nodded and started typing on his data pad. Within minutes, signals were going out across the Sol system, to retired warships floating in the asteroid belt, to experimental vessels hidden in the moons of Jupiter, to captains who had been living quiet lives on Earth, trying to forget the wars they had fought. The messages were simple. "Emergency Protocol Omega is now active. Report to your ships immediately. This is not a drill." Emergency Protocol Omega. It was a set of orders that had been written after the Unification Wars but never used. It said that if humanity ever faced a threat that could destroy all life in the galaxy, the Terran Defense Force could ignore all other orders and do whatever was necessary to stop that threat. Sarah's personal communicator started buzzing. She looked at it and saw that Earth Central Command was trying to reach her. She turned off the communicator. Over the next few hours, Sarah watched as ships began moving throughout the Sol system. Ships that had been sleeping for decades suddenly came alive. Their engines lit up like stars. Their weapon systems powered up for the first time in years. The Ghostmaker was just the beginning. There was the Event Horizon, a destroyer that could bend space and time around itself. The Pandora's Box, a carrier full of weapons that had been banned by every civilized species in the galaxy. The Mercy Kill, a hospital ship that could heal entire planets or poison them depending on what was needed. And leading them all would be Sarah's own ship, the Inevitable. It was a dreadnought that officially didn't exist. The record said it had been destroyed during the last days of the Unification Wars. In reality, it had been hidden in the shadow of Saturn, waiting for the day when humanity might need it again. As Sarah watched the fleet assemble, she thought about the alien scientist who had sent the distress signal. Dr. Keithera had broken her own species' laws to ask for help. She had risked her life to save people she had never met. That was the most human thing Sarah had ever heard. "Admiral," Captain Martinez said, "the fleet will be ready to move in 12 hours, but I have to ask, are you sure about this? Once we leave the Sol system, there's no going back. The galaxy will know we're still here." Sarah nodded. "Captain, 200 years ago, our species made a choice. We decided that we were too dangerous to be around other people. We built a wall around ourselves and hid behind it." She paused and looked out at the growing fleet. Ships that could end civilizations. Ships that could rewrite the laws of physics. Ships that carried weapons so terrible that their own creators had tried to destroy them. "Maybe we were right to hide," she continued. "Maybe we are too dangerous. But sometimes the galaxy needs something dangerous. Sometimes the only way to stop a monster is to send a bigger monster." Captain Martinez was quiet for a long moment. Then he said, "Orders, Admiral?" "Set course for the edge of the Sol system," Sarah replied. "And send a message to Dr. Keithara. Tell her that help is coming." What should the message say? Sarah smiled, but it wasn't a happy smile. It was the smile of a predator that had just caught the scent of prey. Tell her that she got our attention. The first sign that something was wrong came from a Galactic Defense Force monitoring station near the Centauri system. Lieutenant Vexnell was having a normal night shift when every alarm on his console started screaming at once. What in the seven hells? He muttered, his tentacles dancing over the controls. The readings made no sense. The computers were saying that massive ships were moving through hyperspace, but the energy signatures were impossible. "Sir," called Ensign Crick from across the monitoring room. "I'm reading gravitational distortions near the Soul Barrier. Something big is happening over there." Lieutenant Vexnall felt his skin change color from blue to orange, which meant he was scared. Nothing had come out of the Sol system in 200 years. Nothing ever moved near the barrier that kept the humans locked inside. "How big?" he asked. "Sir, the readings are..." "They don't make sense. The computers say there are at least 50 ships, but the mass readings suggest they should be the size of small moons." Vexnall grabbed his emergency communicator. This was way above his pay level. "Get me High Command immediately," he ordered. "Tell them we have a code black situation at the Sol barrier." Similar alarms were going off at monitoring stations throughout the galaxy. Species that had never heard of each other suddenly found themselves staring at the same impossible readings. Something was leaving the Sol system, and it was big enough to bend space-time around itself. The first ship to emerge from the barrier was the Event Horizon. It was a sleek destroyer painted in colors that seemed to shift and change as you looked at them. The ship didn't just move through space. It folded space around itself and stepped from one place to another, like a person walking through doorways. Captain Torres stood on the bridge of the Event Horizon, watching the stars change position outside his windows. His ship could travel faster than light in ways that the physics textbook said were impossible. During the Unification Wars, they had called it ghost jumping. "Captain," said his navigation officer, "we're clear of the barrier. All systems are green." "Good," Torres replied. "Take us to the rally point. And remember, we're not at war yet. Try not to break any laws of physics unless I give the order." The navigation officer grinned. "Understood, sir. Only minor violations of reality until further notice." One by one, more ships emerged from the Sol barrier. Each one was stranger and more dangerous than the last. The Pandora's box looked like a normal carrier, until you realized that the fighter bays were bigger on the inside than the outside. The Mercy Kill was painted white with red crosses, but the crosses were made from some kind of metal that absorbed light and made people feel uncomfortable just looking at it. But the ship that made every monitoring station in the galaxy go silent was the inevitable. Admiral Sarah, Chen's flagship, was 3 kilometers long and covered in weapons that no other species had names for. It moved through space like a shark moving through water, smooth and deadly and absolutely certain of its purpose. The ship's hull was made from some kind of dark metal that seemed to drink starlight. "Admiral," reported Commander Hayes from the sensor station, "all ships have cleared the barrier. The fleet is assembled and ready." Sarah nodded. "Signal all ships. Maintain formation and prepare for hyperspace jump to the Vega sector." "Admiral," said Captain Martinez, "we're receiving communications from several Galactic Defense Force stations. They're demanding to know who we are and what we're doing." "Tell them we're tourists," Sarah replied. "We're going sightseeing in the Vega sector." "Should I really say that, Admiral?" Sarah considered it. "On second thought, don't tell them anything. Let them wonder." The human fleet began moving through hyperspace toward the Zelani homeworld. They traveled in perfect formation, 50 ships that moved like they shared the same mind. Each ship was a masterpiece of human engineering, built during the dark years when humanity had been at war with itself. The Ghostmaker was armed with weapons that fired backwards through time, hitting targets before the trigger was pulled. The Reality Check had engines that ran on pure mathematics, converting theoretical energy into actual thrust. The final solution was a medical ship that could cure any disease or create new ones, depending on what the situation called for. As the fleet moved through hyperspace, it left ripples in space-time that every advanced species could detect. The ripples felt wrong somehow, like scars in reality itself. On the Galactic Council's main station, Emergency Session 15.847 was called to order. Representatives from 100 species crowded into the main chamber, all talking at once. "Order! Order!" called Council Speaker Hental, banging his ceremonial hammer on the desk. "We will address this crisis in a civilized manner." "What crisis?" demanded the representative from the Altair Coalition. "All we know is that something came out of the Sol system." "Something?" The representative from the Vegan Republics was practically screaming. "Our sensors detected enough firepower to sterilize half the galaxy. The humans are coming out of their hole." "Everyone calm down," said Speaker Hental. though his own scales were showing stress patterns. "We have protocols for this situation." "We have protocols for human contact," corrected the representative from the core worlds. "We don't have protocols for humans showing up with a fleet of impossible warships." While the Galactic Council argued, the human fleet continued toward Zilani space. They weren't trying to hide anymore. Every sensor array in 3 sectors could track their movement. The energy signature was like nothing anyone had ever seen. Dr. Cathara was still at her post on Research Station Omega-7 when the reply message came in. She had been sending her SOS signal for 36 hours straight, living on stimulants and hope. The message was short. "Dr. Cathara, this is Admiral Sarah Chen of the Terran Defense Force. Your distress signal has been received. Help is on the way. Stay strong." Cathara stared at the message for a long time. Then she started crying. Not from sadness, but from relief so powerful it hurt. Someone had heard her. Someone was coming. "Cathara." Dr. Velen burst into her lab. "You need to see the news feeds. Something incredible is happening." They ran to the main communications room and turned on the Galactic News Network. The reporter, a nervous-looking Centaurian, was trying to maintain his professional composure. "Reports continue to come in about a massive fleet moving through hyperspace toward the Vega sector," he said. "The ships appear to be of human origin, though this has not been confirmed. The Galactic Defense Force has issued a statement calling for calm, while the Council has declared a state of emergency." The screen showed long-range sensor images of the human fleet. Even at this distance, the ships looked dangerous. They moved with purpose, like predators that had caught a scent. "According to our sources," the reporter continued, "the fleet consists of approximately 50 vessels of unknown class. Energy readings suggest weapon systems far in advance of current galactic standard. We will continue to monitor this developing situation." Dr. Valen looked at Cathara with amazement. "You did it. You actually did it. The humans are coming." Cathara nodded, but she was thinking about something else. In all her years of studying human artifacts, she had found one thing over and over again. Humans didn't just fight wars. They won them. The question wasn't whether the humans could defeat the Krextai. The question was what would be left of the galaxy after they did it. 36 hours until the Krextai reached Zilani Prime. 36 hours until the galaxy found out what happened when you threatened something that humans had decided to protect. Cathara went back to her communication station and sent one more message toward the approaching human fleet. "Thank you for coming. Please hurry." High Admiral Krexthul of the Krextai Dominion stood on the bridge of his flagship, the World Breaker, and felt satisfied with his work. In 6 hours they would reach the pathetic little world called Zilani Prime. In 7 hours, that world would be broken into pieces small enough to fit in his cargo holds. The Krextai had been destroying planets for 300 years. It was what they did. Other species farmed or built or made art. The Krextai broke things and used the pieces to make more ships. "High Admiral," reported his sensor officer, "we are detecting unusual energy signatures ahead of us." Krexthul's 4 eyes focused on the main screen. "What kind of signatures?" "Unknown, sir. The readings don't match anything in our database. There appear to be ships in orbit around the target world." "Ships?" Krexthul made a sound that was probably laughter. "The Zilani don't have any warships. Their entire defense fleet consists of research vessels and cargo haulers. These aren't Zilani ships, sir. The energy signatures are completely different." Krexthul felt a small tickle of worry in the back of his mind, but he pushed it away. The Krextai Dominion had the most powerful fleet in the galaxy. 3,000 ships, including 12 planet killers. No force in known space could stand against them. "Take us out of hyperspace," he ordered. "Let's see what's waiting for us." The Krextai fleet dropped back into normal space near Zilani Prime. What they found, waiting for them, made High Admiral Krexthul's 4 eyes go wide with shock. 50 human ships hung in perfect formation around the Zilani homeworld. They were arranged in a sphere, with the largest ship at the center. The ships were dark and angular, covered in weapons that looked like they had been designed by someone who took violence very seriously. "High Admiral," whispered his communications officer, "we're receiving a message from the unknown fleet." "Put it on screen," Krexthul ordered. Admiral Sarah Chen appeared on the main display. She was a small human woman with gray hair and cold eyes. She wore a uniform that was plain black with silver trim. Behind her, The bridge of the inevitable hummed with quiet efficiency. "I am Admiral Sarah Chen of the Terran Defense Force," she said. "You are approaching a world under our protection. Turn around and leave immediately." High Admiral Krexthul stared at the image for a moment, then started laughing. "Terran? You mean human? The cowards who have been hiding in their little system for 2 centuries?" "We weren't hiding," Sarah replied calmly. "We were waiting. Waiting for what?" Sarah's smile was cold as winter on a dead moon. "Waiting for someone stupid enough to give us a reason to come out." Krexthul felt his anger rising. No one had ever spoken to him like this. The Krextai Dominion had conquered half the galaxy. They had destroyed civilizations that were ancient when his species was still learning to make fire. "Human," he snarled. "I have 3,000 ships. You have 50. Do the mathematics." "We did," Sarah replied. "The mathematics say you're all going to die." "Impossible. We have 12 planet-killer vessels. Each one can destroy an entire world." Sarah nodded. "We know. We've been watching you for the past few hours. Very impressive weapons you have there. It would be a shame if something happened to them." Before Krexthul could respond, the human ships began to move. They didn't move like normal ships, though. Some of them simply vanished and reappeared somewhere else. Others seemed to stretch and bend, as if space itself was being twisted around them. The event horizon was the first to attack. It ghost jumped directly into the middle of the Krextai formation and fired something that looked like pure darkness. The beam hit a Krextai battleship and the ship simply stopped existing. Not destroyed or blown up. It was just gone, as if it had never been there at all. "What was that?" screamed Krexthul's weapons officer. "Probability cannon." Sarah's voice came over the communication channel. "It calculates the mathematical chance of your ship existing and changes the answer to 0. The Krextai fleet opened fire with everything they had. Thousands of energy beams and missiles shot toward the human ships. The humans activated their shields and something impossible happened. The Krextai weapons didn't just bounce off the human shields. They went backwards. Every shot that was fired at the humans turned around and hit the ship that had fired it. Within seconds, a dozen Krextai vessels were destroying themselves with their own weapons. "Mirror shields," Sarah explained helpfully. "They reflect attacks back at the source. We developed them during our civil wars when we got tired of dodging bullets." High Admiral Krexthul was starting to panic. "All ships focus fire on their flagship. Destroy the inevitable." Every remaining Krextai ship turned their weapons toward Admiral Chen's dreadnought. Planet-killer beams, fusion missiles, gravity bombs, everything they had. The concentrated firepower was enough to sterilize a solar system. The inevitable sat there and absorbed it all. The ship's hull didn't even change color. "Reactive armor," Sarah said conversationally. "The more you shoot at it, the stronger it gets. Also, it's powered by a contained black hole, so we have essentially unlimited energy." One of the Krextai planet killers fired its main weapon directly at Zealand Prime. The beam was designed to crack the planet's core and cause it to explode from the inside. It was their most powerful weapon, capable of destroying any world in the galaxy. The beam never reached the planet. Instead, it hit a network of small human drones that had been quietly positioning themselves around the world. The drones absorbed the planet-killer beam, amplified it, and reflected it back at the Krextai fleet. 12 Krextai planet killers were destroyed by their own weapon. The irony was not lost on Admiral Chen. "You know what the funny thing is?" she said over the open communication channel. "We're not even trying yet. This is just our opening move." The human ship called Pandora's Box opened its fighter bays and released something that made the Krextai sensors go insane. Thousands of small craft poured out, but they weren't normal fighters. They were swarms of mechanical insects that could eat through hull metal and replicate themselves using the materials. Within minutes, half the remaining Krextai fleet was being consumed from the inside by self-replicating nanobots. "Stop this," High Admiral Krexthul screamed. "We surrender. We surrender." "Too late for that," Admiral Chen replied. "You came here to commit genocide. You don't get to surrender after threatening 3 billion innocent people." The Ghostmaker fired its temporal weapons. These were guns that could shoot backwards through time, hitting targets several seconds before the trigger was actually pulled. Krextai ships started exploding, before the human ship had even aimed at them. The reality check activated something called a causality loop, which meant that every Krextai weapon that fired automatically caused the ship firing it to explode. The laws of cause and effect became more like suggestions that the humans could ignore when they felt like it. High Admiral Krexthul watched his mighty fleet being destroyed by weapons that shouldn't exist. In 30 minutes, 3,000 ships had been reduced to floating debris and emergency signals. The World Breaker, his flagship, was the last ship remaining. It was surrounded by 50 human vessels that hung in space like hungry sharks. "Please," Krexthul whispered into his communicator. "We'll leave. We'll never come back. Just let us go." Admiral Chen's face appeared on his screen one last time. "You destroyed 56 worlds," she said. "You killed 50 billion people. Did any of them get to surrender?" The Inevitable fired a single shot. It wasn't an energy beam or a missile. It was something that looked like a ball of twisted space-time. When it hit the World Breaker, the ship folded in on itself and disappeared into a tiny point of light. Then there was silence. Around Zalan Prime, 50 human ships hung in orbit like guardian angels made of metal and mathematics. The most feared fleet in galactic history had been destroyed in less than an hour. On Research Station Omega-7, Dr. Cathara stared at her sensors in amazement. The Krextai were gone. All of them. Her people were safe. A message came in from Admiral Chen. "Dr. Cathara, this is Admiral Chen. The threat has been eliminated. Your people are safe. Thank you for trusting us with your SOS." Cathara started crying again, but this time it was from pure joy. She had sent a desperate message into the darkness, and the darkness had sent back salvation wrapped in starships that bent reality to their will. The humans had kept their promise. They had come when called, and they had brought the kind of help that made the word impossible meaningless. But as she watched the human ships hanging in orbit around her homeworld, Dr. Cathara wondered what would happen next. The galaxy had just learned that humanity was still alive, still dangerous, and still willing to fight for people they had never met. That knowledge was going to change everything. The emergency session of the Galactic Council had been going for 18 hours straight. Representatives from every major species in the galaxy crowded around the circular chamber, all talking at once. The air was thick with fear and confusion. "Order, order!" Council Speaker Hental banged his hammer so hard it cracked. "We must address this situation with calm and reason." "Calm?" The representative from the Vegan republics was practically screaming. "The humans just destroyed a fleet of 3,000 ships in 30 minutes. How are we supposed to be calm?" "The Krextai were monsters," pointed out the representative from the Centauri Federation. "They destroyed planets for fun. Maybe the humans did the galaxy a favor." "That's not the point," snapped the delegate from the Altair Coalition. "The point is that the humans have weapons that can rewrite the laws of physics. They have ships that can shoot backwards through time." Council Speaker Hental looked down at his datapad. The reports from the battle were still coming in, and each one was more disturbing than the last. Ships that folded space around themselves, weapons that fired pure mathematics, shields that turned enemy attacks back on themselves. "The question before us," he said slowly, "is what we do now. The humans have revealed themselves. They've shown that they're more dangerous than we ever imagined. Do we try to negotiate with them? Do we prepare for war? War?" The representative from the core worlds made a sound that might have been laughter. "Did you see what they did to the Krextai? We might as well declare war on a black hole." "Then what do you suggest?" asked Speaker Hental. Before anyone could answer, the chamber's main screen activated. Admiral Sarah Chen appeared standing on the bridge of the Inevitable. Behind her, the human fleet could be seen through the windows, dark shapes against the stars. "Honorable representatives of the Galactic Council," Sarah said formally, "I am Admiral Sarah Chen of the Terran Defense Force. I believe you have some questions for me." The chamber fell silent. For 200 years, no human had spoken to the Galactic Council. Now one was addressing them as if she owned the galaxy. Speaker Hental found his voice first. "Admiral Chen, on behalf of the Galactic Council, I must ask, what are your intentions?" "Are you declaring war on the galaxy?" Sarah looked genuinely surprised. "War? Why would we declare war? We just saved 3 billion innocent people from genocide. I would think you'd be thanking us. You destroyed 3,000 ships," accused the representative from the vegan republics. 3,000 ships belonging to a species that had committed genocide 56 times, Sarah replied calmly. "Ships that were about to commit genocide again. Are you saying we should have let them do it?" The chamber erupted in angry voices. Some representatives were demanding that the humans return to their quarantine. Others were arguing that the humans had done nothing wrong. A few were quietly calculating how quickly they could surrender if the humans decided to conquer the galaxy. Silence. Speaker Hental banged his hammer again. Admiral Chen, the Galactic Council established the quarantine around your system for very specific reasons. Your species was deemed too dangerous to interact with the galactic community. Sarah nodded. You were right. We are dangerous. We're probably the most dangerous species in the galaxy. That's why we agreed to the quarantine. Then why did you leave? Why did you break the agreement? Sarah's expression grew cold. Because sometimes the galaxy needs something dangerous. Sometimes the only way to stop a monster is to send a bigger monster. She paused and looked directly into the camera. But let me be very clear about something. We didn't break the quarantine lightly. We stayed behind our barrier for 200 years, even when we knew terrible things were happening out here. We stayed hidden while the Krextai destroyed world after world. Then why act now? Asked the representative from the Altair Coalition. Because someone asked for our help, Sarah replied simply. Someone risked her life to send us a distress signal. Dr. Cathara broke her own species' laws to call for aid. She reminded us what we used to be before we became afraid of ourselves. On Research Station Omega-7, Dr. Cathara watched the transmission with amazement. She was famous now, known throughout the galaxy as the person who had summoned the human fleet. Some species were calling her a hero. Others were calling her the person who had doomed the galaxy. She didn't care about any of that. Her people were safe, and that was all that mattered. Admiral Chen, Speaker Hental said carefully, what happens now? Will you return to your quarantine? Will you remain in galactic space? Sarah was quiet for a long moment. That depends on you, she said finally. What do you mean? 200 years ago, you decided that humanity was too dangerous to be part of galactic civilization. You were probably right. We had just finished fighting a war that nearly destroyed our own species. We had built weapons that could crack planets and fold space-time. We agreed to isolation because we were afraid of what we might do. She gestured to the fleet behind her. These ships represent everything we were afraid of becoming. They're powered by contained black holes and armed with weapons that violate the laws of physics. Some of them can travel backwards through time. Others can rewrite reality on a quantum level. The chamber was completely silent now. Every representative was staring at the human admiral with a mixture of fear and fascination. But here's the thing, Sarah continued. We built these ships to fight each other. During our civil wars, we created weapons so terrible that using them would have meant the end of human civilization. So we stopped. We chose peace over power. We chose isolation over dominance, and now? Asked Speaker Hental. Now we face a choice, Sarah replied. We can go back to our quarantine and pretend this never happened. We can hide behind our barrier while species like the Krextai commit genocide across the galaxy. Or we can stay and help. Help how? Sarah's smile was sharp as a blade. By being the thing that monsters like the Krextai are afraid of. By being the shadow that falls across any species that thinks genocide is acceptable. The representative from the core worlds leaned forward. Are you offering to become the galaxy's protectors? No, Sarah said firmly. We're offering to become the galaxy's last resort. When diplomacy fails, when the defense force isn't enough, when innocent people are about to die and no one else can stop it, you call us. And in return you leave us alone. We don't want to join the galactic community. We don't want to trade or share technology or attend your council meetings. We just want to know that when someone sends out a desperate SOS, there will be someone listening who can answer. Speaker Hental looked around the chamber. Representatives were whispering to each other, calculating risks and benefits. The humans were offering to be the galaxy's guardians, but guardians with enough power to destroy everything they were protecting. How do we know you won't abuse this power? Asked the representative from the Vegan republics. How do we know you won't become conquerors? Sarah was quiet for a moment. Because we already had the chance to be conquerors and we chose not to be. 200 years ago, we had weapons that could have conquered the galaxy. Instead, we locked ourselves away. She gestured to her fleet again. These ships could have destroyed your defense force stations on the way here. They could have demanded tribute from every world we passed. Instead, they came straight here to answer a distress call from a species we'd never met. What assurance do we have that you won't change your minds? Pressed the representative from the Altair Coalition. The same assurance you've always had, Sarah replied. None. You'll have to trust us just like we're trusting you not to try to destroy us while we're out here helping people." The chamber fell silent again. Everyone was thinking the same thing. The humans were right. There was no way to force them to keep their word. They were too powerful, too advanced, too dangerous to control. The galaxy would have to trust them or live in fear of them. "I will need to discuss this with the full council," Speaker Hental said finally. "Of course," Sarah replied. "Take all the time you need. We'll be here, protecting the Zalani system until you reach a decision. And if the council refuses your offer," Sarah's smile turned cold again, "then we go home, and you handle the next Krextai Dominion yourselves." The transmission ended, leaving the council chamber in chaos. Representatives were arguing, planning, calculating. Some wanted to accept the human offer immediately. Others wanted to refuse and hope the humans would honor their promise to leave. But deep down, everyone knew the truth. The galaxy had changed forever. Humanity was no longer hiding behind their barrier. They were out here now, watching and waiting. They were the shadow that would fall across any species that threatened innocent life. Dr. Cathara turned off her communication equipment and walked to the observation window. Outside, she could see the human fleet maintaining their protective orbit around Zelen Prime. The ships were beautiful and terrible, like stars that had been forged into weapons. She had sent a desperate message into the darkness asking for help. The darkness had responded by sending her salvation wrapped in starships that could rewrite reality. Her people were safe. The Krextai were gone. And somewhere in the black of space, humanity's most dangerous guardians were watching over the galaxy.